Okay, moving along, and time's beginning to get away from us, is the interactive whiteboard demonstration. Mr. Corns and Ms. Moreland.
Good afternoon. In addition to Mrs. Moreland, we also have Ms. Jen Martin, who's a fifth grade teacher from Banneker, and I appreciate her patience in this. Our activity that you will be seeing will be focusing on mathematics. In order to keep Mr. Jaffers content, I'll mention his name one more time. But what actually brought us before you today is an English vocabulary lesson on something called a Hobson's Choice. In November, I was given a Hobson's Choice from Dr. Martirano, where he basically asked me, would it be possible to have an interactive whiteboard demonstration where it appeared that there would be two choices, yes or no, but in actuality, there was only one. So what we are going to focus on today is an interactive demonstration. And I would like to stress to the board that this is an interactive demonstration. You have been sitting for quite a time, and Ms. Moreland will be asking you to come to the board to participate in this demonstration. It is
Exactly. Do you want them to move now?
it
So
is-
they can
it is
see better?
Well, it will be
Yes,
very
let's ask them,
straightforward.
'cause
We're
Mrs.
actually
Almond
going
is
to.
asking. Could you
we're-
roll, let's move our seats. We'll get the chairs over here in the front row. I'll move these up closer so that they can truly be students of the 21st century.
Absolutely. A couple of the pieces as you're making your transition that. Come on over. Absolutely. Come on over, folks. One of the pieces that we are going to stress to you today, before I let my betters here over with this, the board that we have today is a new model Promethean board. It is slightly different than the ones that we've deployed. And I also need to make mention again that in a clutch request, Clinton Learning Solutions and Mr. Colin Bonds, who you all had the pleasure of meeting, drove down last night, showed up at our door at 6:30 with this presentation model that we did not have access to. This is not actually an educational model. This is one that would be used at, say, a conference or a display model where adults would be present. And I stress that because this is not a student board. When we talk about getting a mobile board in, it would not look like this. This is a little precarious to have children in front of, but it's great for folks who have a lot more control of themselves. And I'm including all of you in that in that evaluation, right? I learned something also very quickly from Dr. Martirano, and that is surround yourself with folks who are more intelligent than you are or more skilled at their jobs. And Ms. Moreland and and so I have Ms. Moreland and Ms. Davis who are going to be able to Martin, sorry, who are going to be able to carry this charge long after my departure, apparently. Without further ado, and yeah, exactly. Thank God for Reynolds.
See how much we're interacting already?
Yes.
And we've only turned the board on.
So what I am going to do is I'm actually going to remove my shoe from my mouth and allow these ladies to begin the demonstration. So if you would.
Briefly, Mr. Corns asked Jen and I to just sort of show you some of the capabilities of the whiteboard. And to show you all of the capabilities would take weeks because there is just a tremendous amount that the board can do. But what we want to show you today is some of the magic that can be brought into a classroom through the interactive whiteboards. Sorry, I'm on the wrong side. Okay, first of all, the active whiteboard is a tool. It is a vehicle. Because as educators, we know that the Maryland State curriculum is going to drive our instruction. And when we convert to the core curriculum, that is still our focus. It tells us what we're going to teach. The interactive whiteboard becomes that vehicle to make it exciting. engaging for students so that all students can and will learn. We look at the data. This is something through St. Mary's County that we are a data-driven school system. We're not giving up the data. We can actually capture the data off of the interactive whiteboard as artifacts for IEP meetings or PST meetings. We can capture the data to say, did this look at our success rate with teaching these particular indicators of how many students now have mastery to them. And then, of course, incorporating the technology, that won't work for me, is part not only of the Common Core standards, but it's certainly an initiative of St. Mary's County as we add these boards to all of our schools, And then, of course, we are totally focused on knowing that learner and their learning. And as I look back at Ms. Charbonnet, this is the tool that for that student that does not learn in traditional ways, that needs to use all of their senses, the visual, the auditory, the kinesthetic, the tactile. This is a tool that can make that difference for those students. Jen is going to share with you how students who struggle in her class all of a sudden are having those aha moments a lot more quickly because of the interactivity within the board. Didn't work. We are moving, sorry, this was supposed to, somehow with the new board, I guess the technology didn't carry on. Sorry, Jim. We are moving from a teacher-created, teacher-centered classroom to student-centered classroom. We are no longer is the teacher the one who's doing all the talking, who's doing all the working. The students are working. They're the ones who are coming up to the whiteboard, the interactive whiteboard. They're the ones who are doing the work and showing their progress. They are talking about their thinking. They are sharing their thinking. We're moving from content coverage to the students actually learning and doing. We're not just lecturing to students. We're having them as active participants engaged in their learning. We no longer just have whole group. Whole group instruction may occur, but then it becomes, we differentiate down to flexible groupings. And the interactive whiteboard offers us even more opportunity to address those diverse needs of students. We're moving from memorization and recall to higher order thinking skills. And we even had a class this fall, summer and fall, on addressing and having students use those higher order thinking skills more and more in their own learning. We don't teach in isolation. We are teaching collaboration. This is where you're going to see those performance-based tasks really come into play, that students are working together, they're discussing what they're talking about, they're using those research-based best practices. Technology was a luxury, now it is full integration of technology. Brain-based research will tell us that the students that we have now, their brains are wired differently because of all of the vast technology that's out in our society now. Students don't think the same way. They're not the same students that came to us. They have more diverse needs, and an interactive whiteboard is just one of the ways, one of the tools that we use to address that. And then we're going from single learning modalities to multiple. We're addressing the kinesthetic, the auditory, the visual, and the tactile ways of learning. An idea of this, and Jen's going to walk you through, this is an actual lesson that Jen did with her class. Again, it's based on the VSE. And I can touch that button and I've linked it, and there is the indicator right there. So it is definitely based in our Maryland State curriculum. We're resourcing it, and we've got the proof right there.
So you just went to the internet, basically.
I linked right to the internet. So that was,
Right there.
I can go just about anywhere that the internet is available. So this is the MSD K12.org website. This is the actual page with, this is number, and this one was 6B1, and it was using common multiples. So there it is right there. I could even go further if I wanted to see sample assessments. So it is all hyperlinked, it is all interactive.
Just to comment on what you said, can we go to China? It's a good way for social studies to be able to go on virtual field trips, and everybody can see what's going on.
I'll
So
tell
that's
you why I
just-
asked that. You've seen the ad on television, the girl walks into the classroom.
Oh, right.
And all of a sudden, the kids are going on the field.
Right, exactly. And that's what it is, they can go on a virtual field trip right here with everybody.
And Miss Allen mentioned art before. We can take them to an art museum.
Exactly.
And they never leave the classroom, and it has that excitement to it.
And I just want to mention that at Banneker, we just received these just a couple of weeks we've had them, and from day one, every fifth grade teacher and every fourth grade teacher that received one, we've been using them every single day. And, I mean, the things that we are exploring and finding out, I mean, we're just like running to each other, and we're just so excited, like, oh my gosh, did you know you could do this? And, I mean, it's definitely been a great exploration for us, and the students are even saying, hey, what about that button? What about this? So the students are engaged. Student engagement has increased, I can't even tell you how much. Just because this is the 21st century, this is what they want. They want technology, and they want it in their hands right there and then. And that's what we can do with this. They ask a question, we can look it up, we can find it, we can do it right there and then, and don't have to wait 2 or 3 days, and then we lost their interest. So I like that about this. Okay, so whenever going through the lesson on multiples, normally I would stand at the chalkboard and just ask students, okay, what are the multiples of 2? And we would recall the information, more like that memorization of 2, 4, 6, 8, and so on. And I'm writing it. You know, how many students are paying attention? I'm not sure at that time. And they're just really memorizing. Whenever I went through it with my students, well, we'll read what multiples are first of all. If one number is a multiple of a smaller number, it can be divided evenly by that smaller number. Complete the following diagram with the multiples of 2 and 3. So we had the Venn diagram of the multiples, and rather me just go, again, calling out and them going 1, 2, 3. I had 2 students come up. We asked for the rest of the class to kind of just watch and make sure that they were doing it correctly, and they were going to be able to add information as needed. And they were fully engaged because kids in 5th grade, they're really trying to see if their peers are going to make a mistake. So they were really paying attention. And what I liked, I mean, it's true, what I liked about it is when the students came up to the board to actually do it, they weren't sitting there in their head and just simply thinking, oh, 2, 4, 6, 8. The one student said, oh, I'll take 15. And he took 15 and he, sorry, like I said, we're still exploring it ourselves, and moved it over to the multiple of 3. He didn't have to sit there and just think about memorizing. He was actually looking at the number and analyzing and asking it, is it divisible by 2? Is it divisible by 3? So we took it to a little bit higher order of thinking rather than just memorizing the multiples.
And the other thing is that the kids are very thoughtful when they're doing this in front of peers. That it's not just, well, let me pull a number and let me fill out a worksheet and I'm going to turn it in to say that I did it. They're more thoughtful in what they're doing because they're sharing this with peers, and they want their peers and their teams to succeed. So in this one, the students simply would pull the proper number in to the proper part of the Venn diagram. So now it's your turn to try, and whoever has the number 2, Mr. Matthews, you can come up.
I am. I'm sweating.
And you simply, and when you use the pen, you take a number and you pull with intent.
You
So
pull
if the,
with intent.
yeah, you just, if you mark the board, go ahead, touch the board,
Touchable.
touch the board. There you
Pull
go.
with intent.
Is 21 a multiple of 2 and 3?
You're making my brain hurt now.
Because when we're looking at this, what we're truly doing is we're finding the multiples of 2 and 3 and what they have in common, and we're going to actually take that and move it into the next part of the lesson, which in 5th grade right now, we're in adding and subtracting fractions with unlike denominators.
Can't do that one.
I want to see what the other ones do. No. I'll sit back.
I know everybody,
I'll come play
everybody
with that
loves
a
to
little
play
bit.
with that.
Oh, it's number 2 again.
You know how they,
Oh, I
they
see.
said you're using the dice roller to randomly select
A student to
the next
come.
person.
That's me.
Because where before, students were not ever raising their hand to come to the board, everybody's raising their hand to come to the board now.
That's good.
I'm gonna take this one. And move that down there.
Yeah,
Right?
absolutely.
All right.
And then the students are giving feedback at that moment.
Exactly, because we had a student who placed the 16 as a common multiple, and the other ones were going, oh, no, 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 and they raised their hand, started giving feedback to one another, and then the students were able to adjust as needed. Number 5. How many of you are sitting there going, 2, 4, 6, 8, trying to
Pressure's on. So we just take this.
Okay. There you go. That was easy. Okay. So now you get the idea of how interactive the board can be. You can bring up a lot of students. In Jen's classroom, she had 2 students, and then more students came up. They can correct. Again, those good teaching practices. Then from there, Jen.
From there, led into the lesson on adding and subtracting fractions and how we could actually use our Venn diagram to do that. We found our least common multiple by looking and organizing. If we, whoops, oh, you changed me, sorry. Say we, okay, all right, we just organized it. We had them list them in order so that they could look and find that if I had a problem, all right, I'll look at now, please. Thank you. If we had the problem, for example, 1/2 plus 1/3, they were able to use the Venn diagram to identify the least common multiple, which in turn becomes the least common denominator. And they could now know that 6 was going to be their denominator for each of these. And then we could go through the process now, the steps, because that is a step in finding your least common denominator for adding and subtracting fractions, unlike denominators.
What a great visual.
Is this already programmed for you?
Yes, she created
I
this.
made the
Oh,
Venn
you- okay,
diagram,
you-
but there are tons of things that would be available on, that are either embedded in the board or can be pulled off the internet.
Dr. Usman, to address a slight piece of that, both Smart Technologies and Promethean Technologies have a fully stocked online resource where they have searchable databases for the content that you're attempting to instruct, and you can download these charts and notebooks that people have created and posted so that you can, utilize someone else's resource and contribute to this pool. So as Mary's pulled up here, we've got something that's what I want to call a canned chart that you can utilize as a piece without doing a lot of intensive legwork. Part of the rollout that I'm hoping to eventually move forward with is, as we have our 4th and 5th grade teachers across the county that are outfitted with these at other grade levels, that we build a local repository where our teachers can then add their own information, so that we have teachers in Lexington Park sharing with Carver, sharing with.
And we actually have that, going right now on SharePoint. We have a teacher exchange site that teachers can actually put materials up there that they've created in their PLCs and actually extract what they want, adjust what they want, because anything can be replicated or actually adjusted to a particular population. And I want to throw in there too, these smart boards and the technology has increased our usage of our online resources, as well as I want to throw in that Smart now has a math tools package, which we have purchased for the smart boards only by copyright, and have developed out their math product a little further.
My question was going to be, you mentioned that both Smart and Promethean have these resources available to be downloaded. Is that a subscription service that we have to?
Free of charge.
Free of charge.
So a teacher doesn't have to spend hours and hours and hours to kind of program something.
Yes,
So
sir.
that's great.
And,
Yeah, I mean, we just pulled so many things
Yeah.
up. I mean, even when I was
My
trying to
resolution's
get
off.
them to measure angles, I pulled up the protractor and was able to do an example on here for them, and it was just, it was wonderful.
Dr. Russell,
She's doing a lot of things. Go ahead.
Well, one of the other pieces that, from a previous life of mine, where we had these boards in 95% of our classrooms over multiple years, what we found was the teachers were starting to store their flip charts for Promethean that were already tied to the voluntary state curriculum into folders that were date-oriented. So instead of recreating the same lesson year after year, they were literally going back and dusting off the flip chart and augmenting it for the specific needs of their current class. But the feedback we got was, year 1, there was a lot of work. Year 2, a lot less work because we're only doing changes instead of complete recreations.
And as Dr. Martirano asked me to do, there's a lot of tools in here. There's timers, there's revealers, there's all kinds of things to make that magic happen in the classroom. This was a clock, as you notice, it set to the correct time, came right because of the link with the internet. So you can have countdown timers for testing to allow the students to know how much time it is, because some students find it very distracting when you have 5 minutes left. That's stress to them. So having that timer up there, and you can make it as large or as small as I want.
The other one that I saw was the concept of elapsed time, mathematically, developmentally, is a difficult concept for students to grasp. There's, I think, a piece in here where you can pull the clock up, and students, they can move the dials to determine what that means, time that has gone by. And I saw some real aha moments with that, and then you blow that clock up, and it's really a visual.
I don't have it loaded on this one.
But you
I
know what I'm
used
talking
that,
about.
I mean,
Yeah.
yesterday, honestly, I used that when I was teaching fractions on the clock. We had a digital clock in our classroom, so I had a huge clock on here that we were able to use, and I said, even though we don't have a digital clock in our classroom, you can always, sketch yourself your own manipulative. So, I mean, them being able to see that, and it was great. It was great. It actually made a connection.
Can I say one more thing too? One of the, most wonderful things that you can do is to, call up a principal and ask, can you go into a teacher's classroom? We have Nancy Lewis at Chopticon
Yes.
who's working with the HSA review remediation courses, who has students engaged that haven't been engaged before. And it's just the power of it, K to 12, pre-K to 12. And even, when we get younger than that, potentially with the interactivity and the tactile piece. So the power of the board can be witnessed on all levels, and I really recommend, Jesse went into the elementaries and had been in the middles, but the areas in which it's used in the math classrooms, which is where we really focused on in the high school from the beginning because of Mrs. Charbonnet's plan, has had a phenomenal impact on student learning.
That's what I'm saying. I've got hands are going up who would not normally want to come to the board because they want to engage in the board. It's that kinesthetic part of it, that CGI that we do with that cognitive guided instruction. I mean, we want them to be able to construct it on their own, and them coming up here and actually having to, when we showed the a RoboPackers, a game that they were playing, I mean, they were having to do that themselves, and we have that. Sometimes we're asked to find teacher activities, and I happen to find on EduPlace, which is Houghton Mifflin, this game RoboPacker for composite figures, which also worked out for us. We did translation, reflection, and rotation. In this case, the students were able to come up and they feel like they're playing a game, but they're actually taking composite figures, having to translate, reflect, or rotate it for it to fit into the composite figure. But as they're doing that, we're also talking about this. This is a trapezoid. What do you know about a trapezoid? It's a quadrilateral. It has exactly one set of parallel lines. I mean, so we're actually teaching as they think they're playing a game. And honestly, with it being 2011, whatever it takes to get to the kids, that's how I feel. And if they think they're playing a game, but they're learning in the process, I think that that's great.
The other thing amazing to me is having the opportunity to go to so many schools. And indoor recess has been popular lately because of the cold weather. And the kids are coming up on the board, and this is their indoor recess. How powerful
Honestly.
is that? Okay,
Honestly.
it is. They are asking, can we play that math game? Can we play this game? Can we play? And they are using educational games during that 20 minutes of time that they're choosing to do that. That it's not just hanging out with my friends, but I want to be active with the board. So it is really
Honestly, a multiplication snowball fight is one of the games, and the kids loved it. They're like, it's fun, and they want to come up and click it, and then they're throwing a snowball. I mean, on the board, they loved it. That was their indoor recess. Yeah, it's not real snowballs, but they loved it instead of just sitting over there and doodling or something with a friend.
It's a great tool, no question.
So board members and Dr. Martirano, one one of the most powerful pieces of the demonstration is, do you have questions that you would ask of us as to any of these
Have
capabilities?
a manual?
Mary.
We have Moreland, who is specifically going out to work.
Oh, no, you just play with it, so you figure it
No,
out.
ma'am, there are online manuals, but the most powerful piece that we find is that we engage teachers through Mrs. Greeley's department with our e-coach staff in an opportunity where they have FaceTime to actually work with a person who has gone through the legwork and is actually able to.
Model.
So, no, we are not handing manuals to folks and saying, go forth. ye
One of the
and
things
strive."
that I want the board to understand, and I don't know if you can demonstrate this on this or not, Ms. Charbonnet, I know we've talked about this, is the fact that a few of our students need accommodations, and they have things embedded in their IEP that talks about communications with parents, with actual scripted notes, et cetera. So a lesson can be demonstrated here and then downloaded into the internet and then sent to the parent as a way to fulfill the requirement of the particular IEP requirement. Is that correct?
Yes.
And another piece that Mr. Charbonnet has not seen yet, but Mary, would you grab that wand off the side?
I just took a snapshot, so if this was student work, and I just wanted that one snapshot of the student work, I could have that documentation, and that artifact to bring with us.
You would save it into a
So,
file and now have that file.
This is another, with this particular piece of technology, this is another tool. And basically what it is it's a long reach kind of pointer. So when we start addressing students who may not have the capability of physically standing, this board is actually very low because of the restriction of the ceiling, but you have, very small children that are trying to reach the top of the board. You have students that may you have individuals who may need some added reach that they can kind of get a hold of these things. You have students that may not be able to physically stand here and get a hold of what they need. There are accommodation pieces. When we get into accommodations and when we get into customization of education and making sure that things are available, any of the 508 compliances that we would expect to find, which is the accommodations for universal access, that we fill out our COMAR forms on any software, these will meet the mustard of that. As Mary was saying, we can take these pieces and capture, Dr. Margarano is capturing these pieces, sending them home, posting them on an access point where parents can get a hold of them. So this really does meet a lot of different needs. One of the engagements, and I think we need to really encapsulate that word, this is an engagement tool. We're taking good teachers and we're giving them a methodology by which to engage students who are visual. We have speakers on most of our stuff, so you've got the auditory, and then you've got the kinesthetic aspect of coming up and actually doing. And so,
Meaningfully.
But you could go to China, to use Mrs. Crosby's example, and you could show a video of the Great Wall of China, for example, and then
Absolutely.
build that as a prior knowledge activity for something that they were reading, and use that for that vantage point.
what
And we have
just-
Discovery Streaming that works beautifully for
So
that.
that's what I was trying to get at, talking
And
about.
that is what we term as a convergence of our technologies. This is not a standalone thing. We converge our technologies together using United Streaming to come onto this board, so you have a large demonstration. Ms. Moreland has another capability here where she can actually take whatever is on her current screen and what is called annotate over top of it. So you have a desktop, like a transparency that you can lay across. So I'm playing this video of the Great Wall of China. I pause it, and then I write on top of it to circle aspects, when I want to talk about what a crenellation of the top is and this and that, I can certainly do that. So you take that one, I just showed a video versus I showed a video that the students could interact with in a meaningful way. That's how we converge our technologies and move them to the next level of instruction.
Now, from the board's vantage point, we're always talking about the efficient use of resources, and there's no question why we're bringing this forward, so you understand the investment. So, say for example, the aspect of obsolete. You just added that little piece there. Are there other things that we could add on to make it so that there would be almost like a navigational system when that needs to be updated, we put the software in, and it would bring it back up to where
So,
we need it?
um,
So we don't have
but-
to purchase a whole new one?
Both of our technologies have upgradability where we can change their interaction with the new software. This board is brand new and it's got the ability to have both pens working at the same time, but we could take the existing boards we have and upgrade them for a licensure fee. So there is not really an obsolescence that we'd be heavily talking about. And to kind of encapsulate the next logical step of this, if I was going to add pieces to this, while this interactive technology engages students, one of my personal beliefs is that formative assessment is one of the most powerful tools that we possess in a classroom, which basically comes down to the idea of addressing an entire class and saying, do you understand what I'm talking about? And that's a very sanitized way of saying it, but the next logical step to add to this is the ability to do a classroom response system. Now, the piece that this engages with the classroom response system is, well, from an old Baldrige training aspect, I can collect data, but the power is when I demonstrate data to the people who are part of it. So if I have students who are all answering questions and they hit the button and I can show a graph here that says, okay, 50% of you said this and 50% of you said this, with no names attached, then the kids themselves can start being involved in their instruction, saying, guess what? I think we really need to study this a little more because well over half of us don't know it. And then what the teacher has the ability to do with that remote that has a button that says no show on it, hit a button and you actually get the responses for each child. So when I go and break into my flex groups to address misconceptions and to pull a math misconception, let's say I put up here 2 times 2 equals, and I have 4 choices. One of those is, well, 2 times 2 is a bad example. Let's do 6 times 6, and underneath of that, one of the choices is 36, and the next one is 12. I get a bunch of kids that classroom respond to that, and I take 8 children and they say 12. Well, the misconception is they're adding, not multiplying. So then I can say, okay, it's flex group time. Oh, I need to see so-and-so over here, so-and-so over here, and I need this group of 8 students. Come here. And then we sit down and we address the misconception of you're not multiplying, you're adding. So let's talk about how we know when we multiply what that looks like this and that. And to be very blunt about it, in Kent, I had a teacher come forward to me and say that they had taken a release task from MSA where they knew their students knew the objective that they were supposed to learn. They pulled the release task up on the screen and the kids all did the response, and they all bit on the distractor. So the entire class had a misconception. So what did they do? They took the entire class, stopped the current instruction and said, okay, we are going to address this misconception. And it didn't happen again. That's real time, it's accurate, and it is
Right,
able
good.
to address in
That's
a
good.
fluid manner instruction.
That's a very good example.
No, I also believe that, though, I think they have some of the clickers in the system.
We have lots of
Yes,
them.
yes, because
We
I've
use
seen them
Turning
before,
Point.
and they actually work exactly like you were saying. I use them in an AP chemistry class, just either you can take a quiz on it or just making sure the understanding is there that if 52% of the students miss question, number 1, then there's obviously a misconception about this or misunderstanding. And it's extremely useful for the teacher to be able to break down all of that information without having to spend all the time doing it himself.
That's exactly what Mr. Corns just highlighted was an excellent example of that aspect of recovery and retention of information and immediate feedback. When you think about it, you get a test, you take a test, you get some things wrong, kind of say, okay, I don't know that, you don't have an opportunity to reteach, but that immediate feedback allows it, and then you get that feedback from the whole class. That is a very powerful tool of mastery of content, which was very smart to illuminate today. Talk, if you would, to the board. How many years have you been with the system?
This is my 3rd year teaching PGL.
Well, tell us about I know that you're relatively new to this at Banneker, but how do you see this as far as from the perspective of the students? Mary, you chime in as well, because I'm asking this question all across the district.
Right, I
To
just
students.
think the engagement is unbelievable. We did an example, this is a good example. We were doing text features the other day, so we just typed up an article that was in New York Times for kids and we put it up on the board. And I know that if we would have just handed it out to students, they would not have been engaged, because it was point. It didn't have any of the text features included in it. But when we put it up on the board, everybody was looking and everybody wanted to read a part of it. So they were reading and, they were, I would say 99% of the students were engaged in reading the activity. Then we asked them to pull out their Times for Kids, and they realized, oh my goodness, this is what that was on there. And then we talked about text features. So we were able to create a chart on here, how the text features helped them, what were the text features that were added once they looked at it. And I just know that if I would have handed out the piece of paper without any text features blank to the students, they wouldn't have been looking at it. They would have been playing in their desk or, kicking somebody under their desk. I mean, these are fifth graders. This is how they react. So if I can take it, exactly. I mean, they want it at hand, and if they can look at this board and be engaged, I see the difference already just in those few activities that we have done.
But this is being responsive to the 21st century learner.
Exactly.
It's a whole, they think different, and you made a statement, I don't think you were quite aware of what statement you made, whatever it takes.
Mhm.
Students are accustomed to
Right.
the game playing.
Right.
They're solving those problems with all this stuff that they're
Yes.
doing. So we need to keep them engaged, and this is a process of how, as you said, the brain is changing
Yes.
for them. So we can't
Right.
be teaching them these archaic ways
Right.
of memorization being dictated by the textbook. It's this very interactive, particularly when the level of the curriculum is so voluminous that we're not gonna get over it. We have to teach strategies to be able to solve those problems and get at that.
And that's
So-
just it too, with us, we're 6 hours and 45 minutes a day, we're teaching the
Correct.
same time frame that we are teaching when I was in school, but look what's happened since the 70s, and there's so much more, so now we can access it a lot faster so that we can keep up with what's happening in our world along with the kids wanting that technology at hand.
So you're truly maximizing instructional time with this. When your
Absolutely.
kids are in front of you, this is really helping
Absolutely.
you maximize.
Miss Bowling walked in yesterday, I was writing, she's like, you're always on that thing. I said, exactly, because that's what it's here for. It's this tool for these students to come up here. And that was the one big thing that Miss Moreland and I were talking about. It's for the students. It's not
Yes.
for me.
Right.
It's not up there for me to stand and just say, oh, look, I can change it into pretty colors. I mean, I like the colors. It helps because, again, with the special ed students in my class, I feel like having the color change at hand helps a lot. Being able to highlight at hand helps a lot. All of those things are really reaching every learner in my classroom, and that is our goal.
Did you get any of this training in college?
Well,
But
talk about-
colleges now, this is part of the requirements. For St. Mary's College of Maryland, their MAT for teaching, the Masters of Art in Teaching, requires them to know multiple systems of interactive whiteboards. So the students that I am working with right now, that will hopefully become St. Mary's County teachers, they are required to design lessons to use the interactive whiteboards, and at least 2 different kinds of them. So, and we do have the Smart and the Promethean.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Not at the
But even at the
undergraduate.
undergrad, it's moving down. It's definitely, because this is becoming much more, yes, it is becoming the norm.
But the thing is, Jeff Marr, Director of Professional
I
Development,
understand that.
keeping in mind that any new teachers now that we bring in, we need to make sure it's happening in the colleges, but now when they're engaging with us, this is a major pedagogical strategy for us, and they all need to be proficient in that. So we need to talk about the training so that you're not learning on your own
Right.
with it. So Mrs. Washington's point is very critical for us.
Question.
The other piece I just want to throw in there is when we're looking at textbook materials now, textbook publishers are coming out with interactive whiteboard materials that are already pre-made, aligned to the lesson. We can, as I said, take their set package and then adapt them to our classrooms and to meet our needs of our students.
And I've never seen a child get bored. Even the Title I schools have had interactive boards for a while, and I don't care what class I go into, when the kids are on the boards, they are engaged. And they just never seem to lose that enthusiasm. It's, because part of me said, well, as the kids get used to it, will it become commonplace? The kids love it. They love manipulating, they love being up here, they love being part of that instruction. It's a whole difference.
All teachers don't have access to this at all schools.
No, they're not in every classroom.
Right.
Access, they could have access to it in terms of school, but they're not in their classroom.
We are working, I'm sure, towards that.
absolutely,
Elementary.
that is, oh, you
Oh,
want it in
all
all
schools,
classrooms,
all
pre-K to
classrooms.
12. What I am encouraging the media specialists, since they're under me, is that they have one available in the media centers for classes to use and to engage with, bringing classrooms in so that we can hit the students who are not interfacing with them potentially in social studies or in science at this time, because of the power. And it is a tool.
This is an expensive.
Very much so. Review, if you would, how many do we have total now?
Well, there's about 400 smart boards, and we're in process of hanging about 80 Promethean boards. So we'll have just shy of 500 pieces of technology. Now, just so we can get all the numbers out.
Not too long ago, you were saying we couldn't get one.
Yeah, this,
Yeah, I
This-
went to a conference and said, this is fantastic, and got told by, then administrator here, kids don't learn that way. And I thought, whoa, wait a minute, my kids do, and they're not that
So-
outside the norm.
so the ability to have a portable board, okay? We can buy a portable board that doesn't just sit in the media center, but actually rolls around, stable for children, go on and on and on, and it's about $4,000. We can hang a board on a wall for just shy of $2,000. So if you take the multiplication, we have about 1,300 teachers, and so let's knock 100 off for, folks who don't have their own room. There's 1,200 walls. We have, 500 of them covered, so we've got another 700 walls to cover for about $2,000, which,
Dr. Rasmus, go ahead. 2,000 cover the projector too?
yes, sir, that's a complete set.
Whole set.
That's the
That's the
projector
But
and
that's
the
the
board.
board mounted, it wouldn't be one of the mobile boards.
Right,
But
not one of the
a
mobile
mounted.
It would be
But that's
bolted to a wall, but it would be
that's the two
the-
pieces that you need to hang it on.
That's the new way.
Dr. Rasmus' point is extremely important to us in a number of ways, because we do not, as we're advancing this, we recognize the funding will not allow it in every classroom. But we put them out there enough because we don't want to create this equity issue, inequity. By having the access and availability of the media center allows the exposure and the interaction to occur if teachers are signing it out and registered to do that. Because we got to be very careful, and I know they've been very strategic in this, of the haves and the have-nots. Every school has them right now to a certain level, but some classrooms have more than others. Some schools have more than others.
Well, that's what I was trying to allude to also. I mean, elementary, middle, high school, I mean, we're trying to
Do them all.
get them all, we're trying to do them all, but how are we going about doing that?
So-
Just like you said, because you're gonna have people who are gonna get excited and say, hey, I want one of those, and the physics teacher.
So, Dr. Russell, there is a unparalleled cooperation in St. Mary's County between multiple places. The Charbonnet and her ERA funds outfitted many classrooms with smart boards. We went through and did a mathematics deployment using funding that put all secondary mathematics classrooms on board through Mr. Clemens' office and his collaboration with my shop, where we discuss what a renovation looks like. This is part of the renovation. When you go to Leonardtown Middle School, we are currently looking at deploying 17 of these boards to bring the building up to snuff. So through a cobbling together of various funding sources, Title I is fully outfitted, so we have 4 buildings that we don't worry about. Evergreen was as a brand new construction. This was part of the deployment. And I think the key
And that
that,
eliminates the need for a TV too, and VCR and all those.
oh,
issues.
absolutely.
Right.
You need to
But-
understand that,
There's a trade-off.
there's a-
So there's a
but you don't
cost
even need it.
savings
Yeah. This is an
that we
enhancement.
achieve.
when
Our cost of
we
living.
look at this line that Mary's placed here, when we talk full integration of technology, we're no longer talking about the idea that it's nice to have. It's not nice to have, it is essential. And so by doing things very, strategically, saying, we will not build a school that does not have this on the wall.
And
That's
Jen
what
and
we
I
do.
both said, I don't think we could teach without them now. It just becomes part of your daily routine, your daily day. The kids are on them all the time, we're using them all the time. It really creates a magic in the classroom.
So,
Great.
I know that
Great
we've,
invention.
I know that we've greatly exceeded the amount of time, and so,
We do, we can, but Go back and give credit to all these folks who are up here, but recognize the last time at our board meeting when Jim brought in the donations.
Oh, yeah.
We're not moving in that different direction. How many additional ones did we get because of that again?
80.
80.
Yeah.
Because of that relationship, we need to move, and this is watching, we need a benefactor. These are ways to work with our business community, to say we don't necessarily want to say we want $10,000, but would you consider outfitting this? We're doing that, and we were very strategic with our dollars, for our era dollars, et cetera. And so the two of you are outstanding in terms of what you're doing with our teachers, the training that is occurring, what you're doing as our teacher. You were so wonderful talking about how the students are engaged. I want to be in your classroom. We'll come over and see you soon.
Come on.
And Jim, right, and Jim and Regina, outstanding leadership in it. Board members, we wanted you to see this because you made a lot of decisions at the dais that will allow this to happen. And we thank you for that, but you also need to see what's happening on behalf of kids. And I think they've all used some very clear examples of what's happening there. Good job. Any comments here, board members?
It's great. I mean, you and I are math teachers, science teachers. Can you imagine if we had this back?
Oh, you can bring up an experiment, show it, and demonstrate it. Everything, you can go right to it. Phil Nye, the science guy, I'm sure he's on there.
We
That's
can't,
just it.
we can't afford just to have this in a media center. They have to be in the classrooms because the idea that, much like a computer lab, you've got to, choose a time that's going to work with everybody else. It has to be integrated into the entire curriculum over the length of the day in every class in Indiana.
And we'll do that when you see me selling cupcakes on the corner. Crazy fun
Car
store.
washers, car washers.
I'll put
Thank
stuff
you.
in for a garage
Thanks,
sale.
Doris.